We're excited to turn it over now to Samir Padi, VP of Business Development, SAP, and Mark Shields, Director at PwC. Samir, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, PwC, for inviting me to this forum. And most of all, thank you to all the customers who are taking some time to hear what we're about to share with you. The same theme that Rodney and Chris talked about, we're going to continue here, and we're going to talk about what SAP found out. On the next slide, we'll find out what SAP found out when we approached our customers. And about 2 years ago, we had a set of our leaders reach out to the analysts, reach out to PwC and some other big partners, and also to some of our very key customers. And the discussion was about digital transformation, about how you're going to meet the competitive challenges you're getting, how you're going to serve your customers the best way, and also take advantage of all the innovation around blockchain and AI and IoT, et cetera, right? And what we found is a couple of things. In the minds of many of our customers, the journey to the cloud and the upgrade to S/4HANA as their new digital core were very integrally tied together. And in fact, almost 4 out of 5 customers said that we will go to S/4HANA, but we'll do so in the cloud. So very few were thinking they're going to stay on premises with their new S/4HANA system. And there might be steps that you take in your transition from your current state to what your desired end state is. As Chris mentioned, having a lot of the flexibility, ability to confront the disruption and come out stronger from the disruption. And the data centers, traditional ones, are something that people are going away from. And then the other big aha moment for us was there are really 3 or 4 big players when it comes to providing cloud infrastructure at a hyperscaler type scale. And that would be AWS, GCP, Alibaba Cloud in the case of China and Greater China, and then obviously Microsoft Azure. And most of the customers are not really looking at a smaller or regional or a local cloud provider. They wanted to do it in a hyperscale type environment for obvious benefits of scale. And many of you are global enterprises with operations in multiple countries. And so SAP strategy with Embrace in place and before Embrace in place has been very similar. We want to support all the choices that you're looking for. If you are already committed to AWS, if you're already committed to GCP, we are totally fine with it. All our solutions are certified on it. Going forward, they will continue to be certified on it. So you can actually rest assured that your solutions will run really well on all of these large hyperscaler platforms. And then I'm going to come back to where SAP and Microsoft decided to do something a little bit more sort of tightly coupled, if you will, a little bit tighter partnership, and the rationale for it. You'll also see on your screen on the right-hand side, there are several data points we collected in this analysis that was about 2 years ago. And the number I want to draw your attention to is the 54%. So about half of our customers, a little bit more than half of our customers, are saying that they will make the switch within the next 3 years. So the number one objective that we have, SAP, Microsoft, and PwC, is to make sure that we make this journey smooth for you. And we'd like to see maybe more customers feel comfortable and accelerate their timeline, their decision-making, and their actual projects to move to a more strong digital core and a system that allows you to enables you to confront disruption. And if you look at the next slide, what you'll notice is some of the hindrances, some of the reasons why the customers, you, are facing challenges. Because if I'm now putting myself in the shoes of an IT person, a CIO, I'm getting bombarded with lots of messages, and they're coming from very well-meaning companies. These are all the companies that I know that are well-respected in the technology space. And you might get more than 1 or 2 or 3 different points of views coming from all the hyperscalers. So you're getting, Microsoft folks and AWS folks and GCP folks telling you what your next step ought to be and what your path ought to be, et cetera, et cetera. You have SAP obviously giving you the guidance on what we think would be the best way for you to take advantage of your existing SAP investment, how you would move to S/4HANA. And obviously, SAP is not the only big enterprise software vendor in your landscape. Perhaps there are other competitors in your landscape as well. And you're hearing from two or three of those enterprise software vendors about how you ought to move forward. And then PwC, as a very trusted advisor, is giving you their input about how you would craft a path and the ball bearing analogy that was given earlier so that you can get from where you are today to a scenario where you can be more strongly positioned. And obviously, in addition to PwC, there are possibly other SI partners who are doing some amount of work in your landscape, and they are trying to give you input. So now you are sitting in the middle trying to digest 6 or 8 different points of views, and that's not an easy task. And what that does is it actually creates delay, it creates confusion, it creates sort of who do I trust? What is the trusted prescriptive direction to go to? Or maybe it's a blending of one or more of these recommendations. And that is exactly where SAP and Microsoft came together, and PwC joined us right from the outset. And we said that we are going to give a very prescriptive, very harmonized set of recommendations. They're going to come from a position of not just the infrastructure and the hyperscaler position that Microsoft could give, not just the application and enterprise-centric positioning that SAP could give. And then PwC actually pulls everything together because they know how the infrastructure side works, what your current priorities are, what your industry challenges are, what your business objectives are, and they can pull all of these things together. And that's really where Embrace was born. That's where in late October of 2019, SAP and Microsoft signed a partnership. And as you can see, the 3 main tenets on the next slide, you'll see there are about 3 main tenets of how we are going to approach this, or how we're going to resolve this problem. Number one thing is we need to simplify things. So while all the other choices are available, while all the other vendors and infrastructure providers are going to come and give you messaging, we would like the message that is coming from PwC, SAP, and Microsoft to bubble up right to the top of your consideration. And we're going to make it very simple. We're going to mitigate the risk so you know that all the different eventualities between infrastructure, applications, and then your business goals and objectives, and pulling all of it together from an implementation perspective, and then also ongoing application managed services perspective, all of those are considered. So there's going to be simplification. And naturally, we believe that simplification will lead to acceleration. So what we mean by that is you're going to get all of your decisions made quicker because you'll have some degree of confidence, a higher degree of confidence in this one option that is put together by SAP, Microsoft, and PwC together. And we realize that getting to S/4HANA on Azure, for instance, in this particular case, is not necessarily your end goal. Your end goal is to better serve your customer, is to make sure you fend off competition, is to make sure that you're able to adjust to disruption and come out stronger. So the business objectives need you, it necessitates that you take advantage of the innovation that's out there. And I know many of you have taken advantage of some of the pieces like machine learning or conversational AI, or there's some blockchain somewhere else. But on an enterprise scale across all of your lines of businesses, that's what we mean by innovate. And so our recommendation as SAP going into this conversation is to essentially say that we recommend Microsoft Azure as the platform to run your S/4HANA systems, because we think that is the best place for you to run the systems and get all of the benefits that you'd expect. And obviously, we recommend that PwC be the partner that helps you on this journey, on this Embrace journey. And then if we continue to the next slide, you'll see exactly what are the different components of Embrace, because we've talked about Embrace and how it's going to simplify everything. But what exactly is Embrace? So there are 4 main components or 4 main pillars of Embrace, if you will. And our starting point is not so much what does the technology look like and what is the architectural underpinnings, et cetera. That is definitely something we have addressed really well. But we start with something called as market approved journeys. And these are by industry, and these are considering the challenges that you're facing currently. There are different challenges by different industries that have been laid out in the market approved journey. For some of you who are familiar with the SAP world, you may remember we have the solution maps in the previous iterations. And the solution maps are really now being converted into market approved journeys where we lay out how you can either do a delta transformation, a small step that gives you a benefit commensurate with the step, and that would be a data-driven execution, or something completely transforming your business, such as looking at your business model and what I would call Uberizing your business and completely looking at things differently. So going from a brick and mortar presence, for instance, to pretty much all online, which is what COVID is having a lot of enterprises adjust to, right? And so that would be a fundamental shift. And within that, you could go to a customer segmentation of one if you're talking about sort of CPG and retail type industries. So that's where the market approved journeys really bring everything together for you. And we want to start by having that conversation with you and the other leaders in your company so that we really understand what will give you the benefit. Then the question becomes, how do you do that stuff? Once we identify the areas, whether it's supply chain, whether it's financial excellence, whether it is customer care. And then the reference architecture is really taking away the mystery, de-risking everything by saying to PwC and by saying to your IT department, here is how SAP and Microsoft have come together and defined some templates, some guidelines for how you would actually run S/4HANA on top of Azure the best way by leveraging SAP Cloud Platform and some other things to make sure that all the connectivity is the best possible it is. And then any changes that we make going forward, we'll make sure that it will actually not be disrupting your architecture. So when you're doing this before Embrace, you were like sort of guessing. Maybe you're talking to SAP experts and Microsoft experts and crafting a solution together. But this way, you know that you follow the reference architecture. And then the same thing is true about optimized platform, which is the third pillar or the third component there, which is bringing together all the innovation we talked about. It's about bringing the enterprise scale and enterprise type security so you can deploy with ease all of these new technologies, which are now maybe 3 years old, 2 years old, but still in an enterprise context, you truly haven't put conversational AI every place in your organization. You really haven't put machine learning every place in your organization. Same is true for blockchain. Same is true for IoT. And every customer that I have been talking to has done some of these things, but they really want to take it up to the next level. So that's where SAP and Microsoft will provide an optimized platform. And I think PwC is really a key advisor here because when it comes down to business intelligence, you have Power BI from Microsoft and you have SAP Analytics Cloud. When it comes to IoT, there's Azure IoT and we also have Leonardo IoT. And so you've got great innovation coming from both SAP and Microsoft and PwC. And what you're going to get is the best of both the worlds. And sometimes blending is the right answer. And I'd like to give you a quick example of IoT, where you could create a connection between the edge and all of the sensor data that I think the Azure IoT components do really well. But in the SAP system is where you know the context. You know when that part was maintained or that pump or that turbine, who was maintaining it, what was the repair done, what parts were used, what the history is, when is the next upcoming maintenance. And so if you combine the edge with the core and the context, that's will get the best of both the worlds. So I don't think that having Microsoft and SAP and PwC providing you with multiple options is necessarily a confusing thing. PwC is there to guide you through the best possible optimized platform for the type of use case and the type of challenge you're trying to address. And lastly, nothing is really complete unless you have the people element covered. And that's where the embrace engagement and services is really key. What we're doing there is really saying that between PwC, SAP, and Microsoft, we will make sure that every type of technology or every type of architectural consideration or after go live, any kind of managed services, any kind of business process reengineering, all of that is taken care of. So you are not left to wonder, hey, I've signed 3 different contracts with 3 different players, SAP, Microsoft, and PwC. How is it all going to come together? We have a common set of deliverables as a part of Embrace, a common set of templates. It goes all the way from business case building to the technical and architectural elements that we referred to a little while ago, to what happens with the actual lift and shift and the migration, and then the managed services that happen after you go live, and then finally measuring the benefits that we set out at the outset. And then you just repeat this And there's bite-sized pieces, so you'll keep getting benefits in every phase of the project. Now, I think PwC is really the key that pulls all of these elements together. SAP and Microsoft are simply there from a services perspective to ensure success. So we'll have things like premium engagement to make sure there is safeguarding and things of that nature. So it's really going to be PwC who's going to be a main guide through this whole system here. So I know I've shared a lot of content here with you in a short amount of time, and I would like to turn it over to Mark, who's going to share how we are seeing the early success stories come through for PwC, SAP, and Microsoft together by following some of these embrace motions and running SAP applications on Azure. Mark, over to you.
All right, thanks, Samir. I appreciate you coming in. And what's really exciting about this is this partnership really brings a different perspective on our value to the client. So I'm going to go through a couple of iterations of where we find this. But what's really important is I don't have to worry about, or PwC doesn't have to worry about, is Microsoft going to support us, or is SAP, do we have a difference of opinion that we have to get through? All we have to focus on is client value, and that's really important to us. So 2 examples I want to walk through is one technology client where client had an over 20-year-old system. It was an aging platform, highly customized, and to be honest, little process innovation. And as we looked at their environment, there was 3 primary objectives or guiding principles that we wanted to follow. The first one was we need to add business value. It's not just about we need to get to S4. We need to see where there's specific areas of business value that we can get with this investment. The second thing was we want to keep the data. We want the data available to have so we can keep moving forward. Data was a real important aspect to it. And then we want to minimize business disruption. So as we looked at that, and we had discussions with SAP, we had discussions with Azure and the Microsoft team to understand where are we going to get the most value. We looked at the different models. Should we go brownfield? Should we go greenfield? Or we settled on what we call selective renovation. So going through basically a technical migration, but then a selective renovation, transforming business processes where there was going to be clear client value. And we focused on that. We also wanted to make sure that from an Azure perspective, as we looked at the reference architecture, are we addressing all the needs of the business? Are we figuring out what's the business continuity? That was a big challenge in the past. We wanted to make sure that we address that. So as we went through this process, working with the Azure team, working with the SAP team, we really got to understand how are we going to transform the business? How are we going to add business value? How are we going to leverage a reference architecture, thinking about what's the long-term view? Yes, we wanted to set the foundation on S4, but we also wanted to make sure that we set the foundation so that they can take advantage of some of the new technologies. So one of the next things that we're looking at is RPA. How can robotics process automation really help and automate some additional business process? So while we transform some things, we know we can take it further with some of that innovation. And then what really was clear is what's the accountability and ownership. So when issues come up, as issues do come up on a project, who do we go to? Who's going to help us escalate? How are we going to address it? So as part of that process, in teaming with SAP and Azure, it really helped us to drive and add business value for that. We have another client where it was a retail client, again, an aging system, aging platform, but they had a different challenge. It was really around business models. They had made some acquisitions, so they had some new business models that they needed to address that didn't quite work in their current enterprise structure. So looking at that, it was more of a greenfield approach they were going to be able to take advantage of. So we went through that process again, but they also had some other areas where they knew that they had to add specific areas of IoT and machine learning and AI to drive business value beyond just an infrastructure change, beyond just the greenfield change. They need to add more to really get the business case that they needed. So we went through the same process again, working jointly on the reference architecture. Which pieces of Azure should we use? Which pieces of SAP should we use? And bringing that all together. So there was really 2 net things that came out of this. One is just from an infrastructure perspective. In the past, it took 2 to 3 months, 2 to 3 months to provision a system. Now it's less than an hour. Think of the value of that. Think of the value of not just the time that the IT department spends on things, but the value to the business that they can actually have an environment that they can use for their needs. And the other thing is really around how we integrated the Azure specific services with SAP specific services. So looking at, the Azure data services built into their environment, and going back to that reference architecture, going back to that one message to the client, and collaborating as a group to add value. That's the only focus that we wanted to make sure we had, is how do we add value to the client? And that's been a real key focus. And I'll leave you with kind of two things. And as I think through, what's the value of this? So, all right, what are we getting with this? I get it. I can understand it. I think it's two things. One, it's one clear, united voice. In the past, we didn't necessarily have that. Yes, we all wound up working together and make sure, but now we're going in together. We're going in with one clear voice. We're going in with one clear solution, and we're making sure that it's right for the client. And then the other thing is really kind of two parts. I think of it as it's faster time to solution. We have a reference architecture. We know how we work together. We know what we have to do to address the client's needs, bringing our industry expertise, our business expertise with the value and the capability of SAP software, and going through that digital core and the infrastructure and other additional services from an Azure perspective. So faster time to solution, and then faster time to resolution. When we do have issues, we know the right people to go to. We know the right escalation points, and we're bringing our teams together to make sure we're solving our business needs. Joe, that's it. I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Great session. And thank you again, everybody who's watching. Thanks for being with us.